At 11:52 on a Friday night, my phone rang beside a cold plate of dinner, and a stranger told me my 9-year-old grandson was sitting alone on a bench outside a locked community center. I had spent 31 years running into burning buildings, but nothing prepared me for Mateo's little voice saying, "Grandpa, is Mom mad at me?" I grabbed my keys before I understood the question. Then he whispered that his parents had left on Sunday. Sunday. It was Friday. 6 days. One empty house, one green backpack, and no adult coming back for him. I thought I was driving to rescue a frightened child. I was driving that night toward the secret my daughter hoped would stay buried. I do not remember the drive as a whole. I remember pieces of it. My headlights over Custer Avenue. My left hand gripping the steering wheel too hard. The little voice still sitting in my ear, saying Sunday like it was a thing a child should ever have to explain. When I pulled into the Lewis and Clark Community Center, the building was dark except for one security light over the front doors. Under it, Mateo stood beside a metal bench with Earl Bennett's coat around his shoulders. Earl was a stooped man with white hair and grease under his fingernails, one hand resting on the bench like a guardrail. Mateo saw my truck and started walking before I got the door open. He did not cry. That was worse. He just came straight into me, pressed his face against my stomach, and held on with both arms like he had been saving his strength for that exact second. "I'm sorry," he whispered. For what I didn't know if I was supposed to call, I crouched and put both hands on his shoulders. He felt cold through the thin sweatshirt. "You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me?" He nodded, but not like he believed it. Earl cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer." I tried both parents' numbers. Mother's phone went straight to voicemail. Father's too. Camp ended at 6. Nobody came. I checked the file, found your name, and kept him with me. "How long has this been happening?" I asked, though I already knew. Mateo looked at the concrete. "They left before breakfast on Sunday. Mom said I knew the code. I went to camp every morning. I saved some lunch for dinner. I only used the microwave once. 6 days. A 9-year-old boy had been unlocking an empty house, eating scraps, and trying not to make trouble. I picked him up. He weighed almost nothing, and that was when my anger stopped being noise and became a plan." Earl kept one hand on the community center door while I buckled Mateo into the back seat. The boy was folding in on himself, backpack clutched to his chest like somebody might take it, before I shut the door. I looked back at Earl. "You tried Claire and Eric both numbers," he said. "Straight to voicemail. Twice. Nothing. Did Mateo tell you anything else?" Earl rubbed his jaw, uncomfortable with the weight of it. "Said he knew the keypad code at home. Said he locked the door every night. Said he put a chair under the handle even though the door already locked." I closed my eyes for a second. A 9-year-old had built himself a security system out of fear and kitchen furniture. "Earl, I'm going to ask something formal. Write down everything. Times. Calls. What he said. Where he was sitting. What he was wearing. Every detail you remember. Sign it. Date it. Don't soften a word because Claire is my daughter." Earl looked past me at Mateo, then back to my face. "I won't." On the drive home, Mateo fell asleep before we reached the first traffic light. His head leaned against the window, the compass on his zipper tapping with every turn. I should have kept my eyes on the road. I should have waited until morning. Instead, at the red light on Prospect, I opened Claire's page. The post was from 4:18 that afternoon. Orlando, Florida. Claire in sunglasses, Eric smiling like a man selling happiness, Noah and Lily in matching shirts, sticky with ice cream. Standing in front of that bright castle every child recognizes. The caption read, "Our whole world. All 4 of us. Best family trip ever." 4. Not 5. I stared at that number until the light changed and someone behind me tapped his horn. Claire had not forgotten Mateo. She had edited him out where everyone could see it and smiled while doing it. I brought him to my house on Alder Street and carried him into the spare room that used to be Claire's. He woke once, long enough to touch the little brass compass hanging from his bag. I had given him that compass the day the adoption became final. I told him it meant he would always know where home was. That night, I understood he had been carrying it because nobody else had shown him. After Mateo fell asleep, I stayed in the hallway outside his door until the house stopped making settling noises. He had placed the green backpack on the chair beside the bed, zipper turned toward him, compass catching light from the hallway. A child does not sleep that way, unless he has learned the world can change while his eyes are closed. I went to the kitchen, made coffee strong enough to peel paint, and opened a legal pad. Sunday, September 7th, Claire and Eric leave residence. Friday, September 12th, 11:52 p.m. Call from Earl Bennett, Lewis and Clark Community Center. child found outside after closing. No coat, green backpack, brass compass, parents unreachable. I wrote Mateo's words exactly as he had said them. I wrote Earl's name, the time of attempted calls, the Disney post, the caption, the timestamp, and the fact that my grandson had been saving half his lunch because no adult had thought about his dinner. I was not writing because I was angry. Anger is a siren. It screams, burns, and leaves you deaf. 31 years in emergency command taught me that the man who survives the scene is the one who documents it before anyone starts changing the story. At 2:37 in the morning, I searched family attorney, child neglect, Helena. The fourth result made me sit forward. Elena Ruiz, family law, former legal counsel, Montana Child Protection Services. I sent one email. My name is Daniel Mercer. I am a retired battalion chief. My 9-year-old grandson was left alone for 6 days while his parents took his siblings to Florida. I have a witness, a timeline, and proof they were gone. I do not want an apology. I want every legal option available. By 3:30 that morning, the legal pad was full and the coffee had gone cold. Mateo was asleep down the hall, one sock off, one hand tucked under his cheek like he had stopped guarding himself. I stood in the kitchen with my laptop open and looked at the map he kept taped over his bed. Montana was the only state colored in. That bothered me more than I can explain. 9 years old, and the whole country was still blank because the adults in his life kept making promises small enough to break. So I bought 2 tickets to Anchorage, not because I was running. I had done enough emergency work to know the difference between retreat and evacuation. A retreat is fear. An evacuation is strategy. Mateo needed distance from the house that had taught him to whisper apologies. I needed time before Claire and Eric flew back with their matching shirts, sunburned faces, and rehearsed version. At 4:08 a.m., I called Claire. I knew she would not answer. I counted on it. Her voicemail picked up after 4 rings. Bright and fake. The kind of voice people use when they want strangers to believe life is tidy. I waited for the beep. Claire, it's Dad. I have Mateo. Earl Bennett found him outside the community center tonight and called me from the emergency card. He's safe. He's asleep at my house. I kept my voice calm because calm travels better than rage. I understand you and Eric are still in Florida. Do not cut your trip short on my account. The boy has spent enough time waiting for people who weren't coming. He and I are taking a trip of our own. We'll talk when you're back. Then I hung up. I did not tell her where. I did not tell her who I had emailed. I did not tell her that Earl's statement would be in writing by breakfast, or that I had saved the post where she called 4 people her whole world. I checked on Mateo again. His face looked younger in sleep, peaceful, and that made something in my chest tighten. On my screen, Alaska stretched wide and impossible. By sunrise, I had a witness, a timeline, a lawyer with the state's playbook, 2 plane tickets, and a daughter who had no idea the conversation she wanted was too late. Saturday morning, Mateo came into the kitchen wearing socks with one heel twisted under his foot, his hair flattened on one side. The green backpack was already in his hand, like he had prepared for disappointment before he even knew what I was about to say. "Why are you wearing your nice shirt?" he asked. "Because a man ought to look decent when he gets on an airplane." He stared at me. "Who's getting on an airplane, you and me?" His fingers tightened around the strap. "Where Alaska?" For a second, he did nothing. No smile, no jump. He studied my face the way a boy studies a locked door. "Checking for the trick, real Alaska?" he asked. "Or grown-up Alaska?" I felt that question land harder than any accusation Claire could have made. "Real Alaska," I said. "Tickets, seats, everything. We leave at 11. He ran down the hallway and came back with his paper map shaking in both hands. "Can I color it when we land, son?" I said. "You can color it in the sky." By the time we reached Homer, Alaska, the sky looked too wide for any boy to trust at first. The lodge sat above Kachemak Bay, with gray water below and mountains rising beyond it, like they had been carved out of weather. Mateo stopped 4 steps inside the room. He did not run to the bed. He did not touch the curtains. He stood in front of the wall of glass with his backpack hanging from one shoulder, and stared like moving too fast might make the whole thing disappear. "Grandpa," he whispered, "is this really ours? For 6 days, the room, the window too." I almost laughed, but something in his face stopped me. "The whole window, buddy." He took the folded map from his backpack and spread it across the bed with both hands. Montana was already colored in, small and lonely. He found Alaska, pressed the pencil down hard, and filled it until the paper wrinkled. Then he looked at the 2 colored states and the 48 still waiting. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. Day 1 in Homer, We took a boat into Kachemak Bay under a sky the color of old steel. Mateo stood at the rail with both hands inside his sleeves, asking the naturalist what whales ate, how deep they dove, whether they slept, whether they knew their mothers. He asked that last one softer than the rest. Then, the water opened. A humpback rose 50 yards off the side, dark back shining, breath exploding white in cold air. Everyone on deck shouted. Mateo did not shout. He grabbed my jacket with both fists and held on until the whale disappeared. Why did she come up right here, he asked. Maybe she wanted to see who showed up, I said. Day 2. A charter captain named Ron Avery put a rod in Mateo's hands and told him, if you catch it, you clean it. That's the bargain. Mateo fought a halibut for nearly 10 minutes, cheeks red, jaw locked, refusing to hand the rod over. When he finally brought it in, Ron nodded like he had just watched a grown man finish a hard job. That's a fisherman, he said. Mateo looked at me first, making sure praise was allowed. Day 3, the lodge cook, May Collins, caught him watching pancakes rise on the griddle. She tied an apron around him, dusted flour across his sleeves, and taught him sourdough batter like it was family history. He listens, May told me. That means somebody ought to listen back. I did not answer right away. Mateo was laughing because flour had landed on my boots. But I knew something important by then. Fed, noticed, and safe. That boy did not shrink. He opened. And every night after he slept, I wrote that down. Every night in Homer. After Mateo's breathing settled and the room went quiet, I stepped onto the little balcony with my phone and called Elena Ruiz. The bay below was black glass. The mountains were shadows. I would stand there in a fleece jacket, one hand around a mug of coffee, listening to a woman I had never met build a case against my own daughter. Elena did not waste language. Mr. Mercer, she said the first night, what you have described is not a parenting mistake. In Montana, leaving a child under 12 alone for multiple days falls under neglect. That is the word I will use, because that is the word the court will use. I watched a fishing boat move across the dark water. Tell me what you need. 3 actions. All at once. First, I open a report with child protection, not as a threat, as a filing. Second, I petition for emergency temporary guardianship. We may be able to get in front of a judge before your daughter returns. Third, I request school records, attendance, counselor notes, teacher warnings. Anything showing this did not begin last Friday. I closed my eyes. There was a teacher, I said. Last winter, Mrs. Hanley. She called because Mateo had stopped playing at recess and was hiding food in his desk. I called Claire. She told me Eric thought I was overstepping. Elena went silent long enough for me to hear the wind push against the sliding door. Write that down tonight, she said. Date, approximate time. What the teacher said, what your daughter said. Do not improve it, do not dramatize it, exact memory only. She's still my daughter, I said. And hated how weak it sounded. Yes, Elena answered. And he is still 9. That ended the conversation more cleanly than any speech could have. It turned the whole question into something simple. Before I went back inside, I looked through the glass at Mateo sleeping with the map beside him on the pillow. Alaska was colored in now, dark and uneven. A small proof that somebody had finally kept a promise. I opened my notebook and wrote until my hand cramped. Then, I wrote the teacher's full name again. Elena called the second night while Mateo was asleep with the lodge blanket kicked halfway off the bed. I was on the balcony again, listening to gulls scream over the dark water. You need a trust, she said. I have a will. A will invites a fight. A trust prevents one. That was Elena Ruiz. No cushion around the truth. She explained it slowly because I asked her to. An irrevocable trust, funded while I was alive, with an independent trustee in Billings, my house on Alder Street, my investment accounts, the retirement money I did not need, and 64 acres of timberland near Townsend could be moved into it, not someday, now. Claire and Eric would not control it, borrow against it, argue over it in probate, or use Mateo's name to reach it, and you do not hand a damaged child a pile of money at 18, Elena said. Education and housing support, yes. Medical care, therapy, books, transportation, yes. The rest waits until 25. I watched my reflection in the glass door. An old man with tired eyes and a phone pressed to his ear. What if they say I'm too old? They will. That is why we answer it before they ask. She wanted a physical exam, financial statements, proof the house was paid off, and a successor guardian. Someone younger, stable, willing, background checkable. I had the name before she finished. My niece, Becca Shaw, 42. ICU nurse in Missoula, married, 2 kids, She has loved Mateo since Claire brought him home. Call her tonight. I did. Becca answered on the third ring, heard the first 2 minutes, and said, tell me where to sign. The next evening, Mateo slid open the balcony door while I was discussing trustee language. Grandpa, I covered the phone. You all right? He squinted at me. Suspicious and sleepy. Can I have hot chocolate from the machine? It's 9:30. It's Alaska. Behind my hand. Helena made a sound that might have been a laugh if she had allowed it to live longer. 1 cup. Then bed. When he left, Elena said. Softer than usual. Write that down too. The cocoa, the fact that he is asking for ordinary things, food, comfort, permission. Write down how he eats, sleeps, laughs, and trusts you. The contrast matters. So I did. Not because I needed a court to tell me he was healing, because I needed the court to see what neglect had almost buried. On the page, small moments became evidence. And evidence became the fence I was building around his future. That 4th night in Homer. We ate dinner at a little place on the harbor where the tables had paper over them and the windows rattled whenever the wind came off the bay. Mateo ordered fish and chips because Ron the captain told him fishermen ate what they caught. For 10 minutes, he gave me a report on each fry. This one was too skinny. This one looked like Idaho. This one was perfect and needed saving until last. Then he stopped. The fork rested in his hand. His eyes stayed on the table. Grandpa. Yeah. Bud, can I ask something if it's not bad? You can ask me anything, he swallowed. Did they leave me because I'm not really theirs? The restaurant kept moving around us. Plates hit tables. Somebody laughed near the bar. A waitress called for tartar sauce. At our table. The air went still. I put my fork down. I reached across the paper and took both his hands. They were small. Colder than they should have been. With a scrape on one knuckle I had not noticed before. Listen to me. Mateo? Adoption is not pretend family. It is not a consolation prize. It is not somebody trying you out until something better comes along. When a judge signs those papers, and your parents sign their names, they are saying before the law that you are their son. His mouth trembled once. But he held it back. What happened in that house was not because of you. Whatever was broken between Claire and Eric was broken before you ever packed a backpack and moved into that bedroom. A 9-year-old boy cannot be the reason grown adults act like cowards. He stared at our hands. I tried to be easy. That sentence nearly took me apart. I know you did, I said. And I am sorry the adults around you made you think being easy was your job. His eyes filled then. I spent 31 years walking into buildings other men were running out of. I told him. I did that because somebody inside needed a way out. You need a way out now. And there is nothing in Montana, Alaska, or anywhere else that is going to stop me from getting you one. He nodded slowly. Like each word had to land. Then he wiped his nose with his sleeve and said, Can I have your coleslaw? I let out a breath that almost became a laugh. You can have the coleslaw and pie, 2 pies, he smiled then. Small at first, then real at last. I excused myself and went to the restroom. I ran cold water over my wrists and looked at myself in the mirror. I had stayed steady because Mateo needed steady, but I was not made of stone. Claire was 2,000 miles away. Sleeping in a resort bed after leaving him with cereal boxes and a door code. I dried my hands, no more weighing it. We were going home, and my daughter was going to learn what finished meant. Claire and Eric got back to Helena on Monday night. They did not call Mateo. They did not ask to hear his voice. Claire sent me one text the next morning. 8 words with no punctuation. We need to talk in person. I forwarded it to Elena and wrote, Wednesday, my house, 9 o'clock. Her reply came 3 minutes later. I'll be there at 8:59. She was. Charcoal coat, flat shoes, hair pinned tight, carrying 2 folders thick enough to make the dining table feel official. I poured coffee. She accepted it without sugar and set a recorder beside her cup. They think this is a family conversation, I said. Elena opened the first folder. It is, she said. It's just going to be one with a record. No one was guessing anymore. At 9:04, Eric came in first. He had a tan, a pressed blue shirt, and the expression of a man who believed he could turn any room back in his favor if he spoke first. Claire followed behind him. Arms crossed, chin lifted, eyes already wet with anger she had mistaken for innocence. Then they saw Elena at my dining table. Eric stopped. Claire looked at me. Dad, who is she? Elena Ruiz, I said. Family law. Sit down. This is insane, Claire snapped. You brought a lawyer into our family. Elena did not blink. Mrs. Dalton. I was invited because this is a family matter. Please sit. They sat because people like Eric always sit when they realize the person across from them has papers. Elena opened the first folder and slid a timeline onto the table. Sunday, September 7th, approximately 6:20 a.m. Your vehicle left the residence with 4 occupants. Doorbell footage from a neighbor confirms 2 adults and 2 children. Mateo Dalton, age 9, remained inside the home without adult supervision. Eric's jaw tightened. Elena continued. From Sunday through Friday, Mateo walked himself to day camp and returned to an empty house. He reports eating cereal, crackers, soup, and portions of his camp lunch saved for evening meals. Friday, September 12th, camp concluded at 6 p.m. No authorized adult arrived. At 11:52 p.m., he was found outside the Lewis and Clark Community Center by Earl Bennett, who provided a signed statement. At 11:56 p.m., he was retrieved by his maternal grandfather, Daniel Mercer. Claire's face had gone pale. Elena turned one page. Attachment C is a public social media post, time-stamped Friday, September 12th, 4:18 p.m., placing both parents in Orlando, Florida. The caption reads, "Our whole world, all 4 of us," Claire whispered. "You don't understand," Eric leaned forward. "We had arrangements. My cousin Tara was supposed to check on him." Elena slid another sheet across the table before he finished. Tara Dalton states she was asked in a group text on August 30th. She did not agree. She also provided hotel receipts and location records placing her in Boise, Idaho. From September 6th through the 13th, the text thread is attached. Eric looked at the paper and went still. Claire covered her mouth. Elena folded her hands on top of the folder. "I want to save everyone time," she said. "We are not here to decide whether this happened. It happened. We are here so you understand what has already been done." Elena let the silence sit until Eric reached for his phone. "You may want to wait," she said. He froze. On Tuesday, September 16th, I filed the child protection report with supporting exhibits. The department has opened a neglect case and confirmed immediate safety concerns. On Wednesday morning, I appeared before Judge Ellery Hoskins on an emergency petition for temporary guardianship. Claire stared at her. "Emergency what?" "Temporary guardianship," Elena said. "Granted to Mr. Mercer that afternoon. It has been in effect for 8 days. The full hearing is scheduled for October 9th. You will both be formally served today." For the first time, Eric looked at me instead of the paperwork. "You had no right. I had a grandson on a bench," I said. Claire's voice cracked. "Dad, you're 69. Elena was already sliding the next page forward. 69. Medically cleared September 22nd. Stable residence, no mortgage, adequate income. 31 years of public service. And a named successor guardian. Rebecca Shaw. 42. ICU nurse, background check submitted. Written consent attached. That question had already been answered before they walked in. She closed the folder. Mateo will not be moved again because adults failed to plan. Claire looked at me after Elena finished. And for the first time that morning, she stopped trying to look offended. Her shoulders dropped. Her eyes went red in a way I had seen only once before. "The day we buried her mother. I knew," she said. Eric turned toward her. "Claire." She did not look at him. "I knew Mateo was staying home." Eric said he hated crowds, that Disney would overwhelm him, that Noah and Lily would be easier without him. He said we'd take Mateo somewhere quiet later. Her voice cracked on the word later. "And you believed that I asked?" "No," she whispered. "I chose it because it was easier than fighting him." She pressed both hands flat on the table. I walked past his room with my suitcase. He was sitting on his bed with that map. He asked what state we were going to. I told him Florida. He asked if he could color it when we came back. The room seemed to move away from me. I said, "Soon, buddy." Then, I closed his door. Eric shoved back his chair. "You're making this sound worse than it was." Claire finally looked at him. "It was worse than we said." I stared at my daughter and felt something colder than rage settle into place. Rage would have been simple. This was grief. "I raised you," I said. "I know what you knew. That's the part I can't carry for you." I reached for the second folder, the one Elena had not opened yet, and slid it across the table myself. Eric took it first because men like him always reach for money before they reach for truth. "What is this?" he asked. "Protection," I said. He flipped the first page, then the second. The color started leaving his face in slow stages. "The house on Alder Street. My investment accounts. The retirement funds I could live without. 64 acres of timberland near Townsend that my father left me when I was 28. All of it had been transferred into an irrevocable trust for Mateo. administered by an independent trustee in Billings. Claire stared at the papers as if they were written in another language. Elena filed it Friday, I said. Funded, signed, witnessed, recorded where it needed recording. Education, therapy, medical care, and housing support begin at 18. The remaining assets release at 25. You two cannot control it. Borrow against it. Redirect it. Or hold it over his head. Eric's chair scraped backward. This is punitive. No, I said. Punitive was what I wanted to do the night I found him on that bench. Claire found the last page and stopped. 2 college accounts, $35,000 each. Noah and Lily. They're children, I said. They don't pay for what you did. Eric looked sick with anger. I looked right back at him. This isn't revenge, this is accuracy. Elena laid out the conditions like she was reading weather warnings, not negotiating family peace. Mateo remains with Mr. Mercer pending the October hearing. He attends weekly therapy with a licensed child trauma counselor. Mrs. Dalton may have 1 supervised visit per week at an approved facility, provided she attends parenting counseling and therapy with documented participation. Mr. Dalton has no contact until he completes a psychological evaluation and the court reviews it. Eric laughed once. Sharp and ugly. You can't cut me out of my own house. Elena looked at him. You cut a child out of his. That ended his laugh. She opened the school file next. Mrs. Hanley's February note was there. The counselor's report was there. Mateo hiding food. Mateo withdrawing from other children. Mateo saying he did not want to be trouble. Both Claire and Eric had signed the acknowledgement. Eric stood so fast his chair hit the wall. He walked out without another word. Claire stayed. Her hands were shaking. Is he okay? She asked. I looked at my daughter a long time. He will be, I said. But not because you finally asked. She nodded like the answer had hit exactly where it should. 6 months later. Mateo lived in my house like a boy finally allowed to take up space. Permanent guardianship came through in December. Judge Hoskins looked over the file for a long time before he spoke. Then he said he had rarely seen a child safety petition prepared with that much care. Elena did not smile. She just wrote something down, which I had learned was the closest she came to celebrating. Mateo gained 11 pounds, not all at once, not magically, but steady. Breakfast stopped being something he studied before eating. He started asking for seconds. He saw a therapist named Dr. Leanne Okanjo every Thursday and liked her office because she had a moon-shaped lamp and never made him talk before he was ready. His room had the map on the wall above the desk. Montana was colored. Alaska was colored dark enough to wrinkle the paper. Idaho came next after we visited Becca in Missoula and kept driving west. Wyoming followed because one Saturday the truck had gas, and I had no better excuse. He still had 46 states left. I told him we had time. Claire came to every supervised visit. That surprised me more than I wanted to admit. The first few weeks, I expected excuses. Traffic, work, a cold. Some new reason why showing up was harder than posting about family online. But she arrived every Thursday at 4. Early, with a book under one arm. Like even her body understood, she no longer had the right to reach for him first. She read whatever Mateo chose. Sometimes he sat beside her. Sometimes he sat across the room and built towers from blocks while she read to the air. Claire did not complain. She did not cry where he could see it. She did not ask him to forgive her. That mattered. Through counseling, pieces came out slowly. Eric had never wanted the adoption finalized. He had called Mateo temporary long after the papers said son. Claire admitted she had spent years shrinking inside that marriage, calling fear compromise and silence peace. In January, she filed for divorce. I wish I could tell you that fixed something cleanly. It did not. Divorce did not erase the bench. Therapy did not erase 6 nights in an empty house. Showing up late to motherhood is still showing up late. But I know the difference between a person performing regret and a person trying to survive the truth of what they did. Claire was trying. Badly some weeks, quietly most weeks, but trying. Noah and Lily began coming once a month. The first time Lily saw Mateo, she ran straight into him and wrapped arms around his middle. Where did you go? She asked. Mateo looked over her head at me, unsure whether love could come without a trap. I nodded once. He hugged her back. Last Sunday, I found Mateo on the living room rug with the map spread under his elbows. He had drawn a thin blue line out from Homer into Kachemak Bay and marked a little whale at the end of it. What's that, bud? That's where she came up, he said. So I don't forget. I stood there with a laundry basket in my hands and understood something I could not have explained in court. A child remembers the place where the world proves it has not finished with him. Claire and Eric spent $31,800 showing everyone a family of four. I spent my savings, my house, my land, and whatever years I have left making sure one boy never again has to ask whether he counts. If this story stayed with you, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. More than that, tell me what you would have done in my chair.